Mr. Vice President, I'd like to return just once more, if I may, to this area of dealing with the communists. Critics have claimed that on at least 3 occasions in recent years, on the sending of American troops to Indochina in 1954, on the matter of continuing the U-2 flights in May, and then on this definition of our commitment to the offshore island, that you have overstated the administration position, that you have taken a more bellicose position than President Eisenhower. Just 2 days ago, you said that you called on Senator Kennedy to serve notice to communist aggressors around the world that we're not going to retreat 1 inch more anyplace, whereas we did retreat from the Tachin Islands, or at least Chiang Kai-shek did. Would you say this was a valid criticism of your statement of foreign policy?
Well, Mr. Cater, of course it's a criticism that is being made. I obviously don't think it's valid. I have supported the administration's position, and I think that that position has been correct. I think my position has been correct. As far as Indochina is concerned, I stated over and over again that it was essential during that period that the United States make it clear that we would not tolerate Indochina falling under communist domination. Now, as a result of our taking the strong stand that we did, the civil war there was ended. And today, at least in the south of Indochina, the communists have moved out, and we do have a strong, free bastion there. Now, looking to the U-2 flights, I would like to point out that I have been supporting the President's position throughout. I think the President was correct in ordering these flights. I think the President was correct, certainly, in his decision to continue the flights while the conference was going on. I noted, for example, in reading a particular discussion that Senator Kennedy had with Dave Garraway shortly after his statement about regrets, that he made the statement that he felt that these particular flights were ones that shouldn't have occurred right at that time. And the indication was, how would Mr. Khrushchev have felt if we had had a flight over how would we have felt if Mr. Khrushchev had a flight over the United States while he was visiting here? And the answer, of course, is that communist espionage goes on all the time. The answer is that the United States can't afford to have an espionage lag, or should I say an intelligence lag, any more than we can afford to have a missile lag. Now, referring to your question with regard to Quemoy and Matsu, what I object to here is the constant reference to surrendering these islands. Senator Kennedy quotes the record, which he read from a moment ago. But what he forgets to point out is that the key vote, a vote which I've referred to several times, where he was in the minority, was one which rejected his position. Now, why did they reject it? For the very reason that those senators knew, as the President of the United States knew, that you should not indicate to the communists in advance that you're going to surrender an area that's free. Why? Because they know, as Senator Kennedy will have to know, that if you do that, you encourage them to more aggression.
Senator Kennedy?
Well, number one, on Indochina, Mr. Nixon talked before the newspaper editors in the spring of 1954 about putting, and I quote him, American boys into Indochina. The reason Indochina was preserved was a result of the Geneva Conference, which petitioned Indochina. Number two, on the question of the U-2 flights, I thought the U-2 flight in May, just before the conference, was a mistake in timing because of the hazards involved if the summit conference had any hope for success. I never criticized the U-2 flights in general, however. I never suggested espionage should stop. It still goes on, I would assume, on both sides. Number three, the Vice President on May 15th, after the U-2 flight, indicated that the flights were going on, even though the administration and the President had canceled the flights on May 12th. Number three, the Vice President suggests that we should keep the communists in doubt about whether we would fight on Quemoy and Matsu. That's not the position he's taking. He's indicating that we should fight for these islands, come what may, because they are, in his words, in the area of freedom. He didn't take that position on Tibet. He didn't take that position on Budapest. He doesn't take that position that I've seen so far in Laos. Guinea and Ghana have both moved within the Soviet sphere of influence in foreign policy. So is Cuba. I merely say that the United States should meet its commitments to Formosa and the Pescadores. But as Admiral Yarnell has said, and he's been supported by most military authority, these islands that we're now talking about are not worth the bones of a single American soldier. And I know how difficult it is to sustain troops close to the shore under artillery bombardment. And therefore, I think we should make it very clear, the disagreement between Mr. Nixon and myself. He's extending the administration's commitment.